Richard Lowe. I'm an attorney, and I've been representing a number of young men, in particular military guys, Marines, in connection with paternity fraud issues. It's just one of those issues that I think needs to be resolved. It's totally unfair to the young men who get caught up in it, and it goes on for 18.5 years. In one instance, one of my Marines will pay $250,000 for the support of a child that's not his own before this is over. The other Marine will probably be a little better off. He'll end up paying about $160,000. These are payments coming from young guys who work very hard for their money, and they should not be required to do any of this. Unfortunately, it turns out that the blood bank, the American Red Cross, has pointed out that there's roughly 30% of all paternity requests that they test for, all of them end up showing that the person alleged to be the father is not the father. In the military, I understand it's higher than that. And it's particularly difficult with the military because these young men go abroad, they fight over wars, and if they die, nobody ever finds out the child is not theirs. So what has really been happening down in the San Diego area in particular is really pretty despicable. Indeed, I had one court who actually wrote an opinion saying that this was really despicable activity on the part of the young lady. However, since California has a 2-year statute and only allows you 2 years in which to challenge paternity, the time had passed, and therefore it was just very sad. The court was very upset about it, but acknowledged that as far as they're concerned, the young man had proven, the Marine had proven it wasn't his child, but 2 years had passed, so he was now stuck with paying child support for another, I guess, 16 years, which is just totally unfair. As it is right now, you can use DNA to have a man released from prison, showing that he was not there, he didn't commit the crime. We should be able to do the same thing with DNA now. At any which time that these young men discover it's not their child, they ought to be able to demand a DNA test and have that matter resolved. Instead, for political reasons, the state insists on keeping these laws on the book. Fortunately, there are other states who have now changed their laws, such as Maryland and I think North Carolina among them, right? And I guess we're hoping California will do the same sometime soon. That's it. Another issue involved here is that it's not just a fraud against these young men. These guys in the Marines now, it's a fraud against them personally in that they have to pay child support for a child that's not their own. But in addition to that, it's a fraud against the U.S. Treasury because these young ladies apply for benefits to which they're definitely not entitled. But because the system says that this child is this Marine's child, that this child's father is this Marine, the system now rewards that lady and allows her to get benefits from the federal government itself, which in essence defrauds both the Marine and the U.S. Treasury. And that is something that we should definitely be looking into. I have proposed, unsuccessfully so far, that before the military issues any benefits to any child, that they should first demand a paternity test to make sure that they themselves, the military, are not defrauded. Not just the Marine, the actual Marine involved, but the military itself is not paying benefits, which can run into thousands and thousands of dollars in medical care, for instance, for a child that they should not be doing that for. Now, we're not saying that these children should be left out there. The fact of the matter is that the mother knows who the father is, and she needs to focus on that aspect of it, and have that father be responsible for payments. However, because these military guys are very, very consistent, they're very trained to follow orders. So when they get a court order saying you must pay, irrespective of whether or not it's your child, they follow those orders religiously. That's the way these guys are. And unfortunately, in the end of it all, they are the guys who have been gone to fight for us, are now suffering under really, really laws that should not exist. Very important to me because, in all honesty, I mean, these young men really, really deserve better from us. And the truth of the matter is that it is a difficult issue. One of my clients, one of the young Marines, when he found out it was not his child, he went into a session of really extreme exercises just to keep his emotions under control because he was really, really devastated by this information. And he just, because they're so well trained, nobody resorted to violence. Although it was very difficult for this particular young man because he went every day, he did nothing but 200 or 300 push-ups, everything just to keep it. Whenever his emotions got to him, he had to keep it under control. I take these cases personally because I do believe these guys deserve better. I truly believe that having done what they have done, volunteered to go abroad, to go serve our country in situations that are really very dangerous to them, there's no reason in the world our laws should not protect them better. Now, there is a statute, a federal statute, that bars any state statute of limitation from running against any service member while they're in the service of their country. However, when these young men are in California and they're getting divorced, there's a little box that their attorneys keep telling them to check, which waives all rights under that particular statute. And unfortunately, that is what has happened in a number of instances. The young men have unfortunately checked that little box that waived their rights under the Service Member Civil Relief Act of 1940. And that automatically means that any statute can run against them. And that is where now our child support services people are saying, no, 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 the statute has run. And the fact of the matter is that you waive your rights on the Service Member Civil Relief Act, so you have nothing coming from that side. This is just wrong. That is what Congress said. Hey, you guys, you young men, you young women, you go over there, you represent us, you fight for us. We have got your back. We are going to guarantee that no statute runs against you. And this is the way it should be, because nobody should be worried about a statute running against them while they're facing the enemy of their country. However, nobody warns these young men in California not to check that box. Do not check that little box that waives your rights. And apparently divorce lawyers after divorce lawyers get them to check this box, and that automatically eliminates their argument that no statute of limitation can run against them. But that's the unfortunate problem. The real unfortunate problem is that when a young man is in the hospital, whether in Marine or otherwise, and his wife or his girlfriend is telling him that she just had a child and it's his child, they're young men. They're caught up in the emotion of it. This is their first child or whatever you, and they're excited. And it never occurs to them to challenge that issue, to say, hey, before I acknowledge paternity, let's have a DNA test, which should be automatic because you're in the hospital already. It's a very simple matter. It's less than $100 for the test or something like that, so it's no big thing, and that should be done there. However, what happens is these poor young guys are so enthusiastic about having their child, they will sign anything. And then when the young lady who knows that there's a possibility that not their child, as long as she keeps quiet for 2 years, that's it. That's all she needs to do. Once the 2 years is over, this young man is stuck. I had one case in which I actually got the court to reverse it completely, and that is one involving a young man by the name of Pedro Soto, who had no idea that his girlfriend, the child that she bore that day in that hospital, was not his child. It was a child of herself and his friend. And they had actually started living together, raising the child together, but she filed for child support against him because he signed a document acknowledging that he was the father. And she continued to get child support from him for 13 years, while at the same time the child, the father, and another baby also came along. So they have this family living together fine. Child is being supported by his real father, but at the same time mom is collecting child support from my client, which I told the court was basically pocket money then, because it's certainly not child support. That is one of those in which I got the court to actually acknowledge that this was wrong, to exercise their equitable powers of doing the right thing, and actually set aside this particular one. It's been really rough in the others, one in particular the Marines, because as I say, in that case I've had a situation where the court actually says, yes, I agree with you, it's not your child, but you're stuck because you've signed the waiver, giving up your rights under the Service Member Civil Relief Act, and in addition to that, you waited more than 2 years to come to court. We pointed out over and over that he had no idea. In the first 2 years, nobody knew. He was, like all young fathers, he was just excited about his young son, going everywhere with the child, etc., etc. And it's only because somebody suggested that it might not be his child. A friend, a very good friend of the ex-wife, who knew the whole story, suggested you may want to do a DNA test. The moment he does a DNA test, it shows it's not his child, right? But the young ladies who do this really wait for that 2 years to pass, and then they go ahead, and you're just stuck 18 years.
Questions?
Yeah, we've been doing that. I mean, a number of organizations, Fathers and Families, I write for them, I've written articles for them about this type of stuff. They're all out there now trying to get fathers an equal say in the whole family law area, which is very difficult. But in particular, we've been focusing on this paternity fraud issue, and we've tried to work with legislatures in Sacramento One of them, Roderick Wright, he was one of those pushing it, but apparently it didn't go very far because the governor vetoed it rather than allow California to lose money from the federal government. They vetoed it altogether, right? So that didn't work out. But at the same time, too, other people that I'm aware of are also trying to get it changed on the federal level. They've been working with Senator Dianne Feinstein of California to have her look into it to see, well, I mean, how can we change the laws so at least the guys in the military at least, they have some protection from this, because some or the other, nobody seems to be looking at the fact that these young guys are really suffering under this load. Indeed, one of my, in the opinion, the last opinion I got out of this, the judge actually wrote in there that unfortunately in this particular area of the law, it is the one place that he knows as a fact that the old saying, nobody should benefit from their wrongdoing, doesn't apply in this particular section, because the people who commit the lies, who tell the lies, are the ones who get paid all the way through. And some of them are really incredible, because even after it's acknowledged and shown that it's not the young man's child, the mothers still demand more child support, more benefits. I had one who wrote the commanding officer, my Marine wrote his commanding officer, and told him that my client was acting outrageous and not providing all the benefits available for his son, after having known that it's not my client's child. I wrote the commanding officer in response to that one and asked him please not to issue any benefits without first demanding a DNA test, because we had actually had a DNA test done which showed it was not my client's child. I have not heard from the commanding officer. I may never hear from him, but so far as I understand it, no benefits have been issued so far, so I'm hoping that that will work. Because unless we discourage this, it's not going to change. There's no basis for these young ladies to act differently because they face no punishment. In addition, even in the situation where after my client had been paying for 13 years and I actually got the court to reverse, deny, stop the payments completely, the law is very clear. You cannot get any money back. You cannot get a penny back. The situation as far as the law is concerned, it will harm the child if you get the money back. Well, that's not always true. Certainly in a situation where my client is paying child support to a woman who is living with the boy's father and have a regular family, it's just not true. You know, there's no harm to that child if the mother is forced to pay it back. Let her go get a job and pay it back, because she knew when she was taking this money that it was all lies. But there's no punishment, there's no problem there. If you lie and the 2 years pass, you continue to get child support. Even if they find out that you lie, you still don't have to pay back a penny. I'm not sure, I don't know of any other section of the law that does that, that allows a person who commits fraud, plain and simple, to walk away with all the benefits. I don't know any other section of the law that does this. And this is really pretty frightening, because judges have equitable powers, but I guess whether politically or otherwise, or because of they're looking towards their future in the profession, very few of them will exercise those powers. And very few of them will go turn around and say, this is wrong, I'm going to do the right thing. They get out of it by arguing, well, it's in the best interest of the child for him to have a father. The guy has a father, the child has a father. The mother knows who the father is. But they insist that this, I had one judge actually tell me, well, you know, it could have been a one-night stand. So there's no way she's going to find a father again, and he's the only father. But that's just not right, because in essence, all the times that I'm aware of, they're not fathers anymore once they find out that it's not their child. Once a DNA test is established that it's not their child, they're no longer fathers. They're just people paying their money. They don't interact with the child. They don't do anything. The mother just gets her check every month. In one instance, I have a young lady, another Marine. She has never worked since she got out of high school. She's been out of high school 10 years and she's never worked. But my client is paying her $17,000 a year in child support for a child that's not his own. So in essence, there's no incentive for her to, I mean, why should she get a job? 17 grand a year? I don't have to spend a dime, I don't have to go there and work for it. So that's the situation that's going on, right? What's going on actually, because I really feel it for these guys. I feel it for them in not just the financial aspect, but emotionally too. In addition to that, what happens is that, you know, my young man who's paying $17,000 a year, it's difficult for, he's now remarried, but it's hard for him to start a family. because he's still, I mean, he's in the Marines. He's not, that's not, they don't pay a whole lot of money in the Marines or any other military divisions. But here he is paying all that money. He's got a new wife, loves to start a family, and finding it very difficult to make ends meet. And this child, the mother of this child that he's supporting, is constantly demanding more. She wants more benefits, more medical, more data, constantly like that. And apparently he had signed an agreement when he got divorced that he was responsible for all medical bills, both insurance covered and not covered by insurance. So every time she comes up with some new doctor that the kid needs, and my client has to pay for it, and this just goes on. So that is in addition to the $17,000 in child support, so it's probably more like $18,000-19,000 a year he spends on this child that's not his own. And that makes it very difficult for him to start his own family, because he needs that money for his own family, and he just doesn't have it. It is a social problem that needs to be resolved, and it needs to be resolved at the legislative level. That's the reality, right? The problem was created by the legislature, and it needs to be resolved by them. As I said to you before, you can use DNA to prove that you didn't murder somebody or what have you, and you get out of jail. Here we have a perfect method of showing that it's not this particular guy's child. And the DNA, they just don't allow it. After 2 years, you're stuck. And that is something the legislature need to resolve. There's some move afoot in other states to try and change that, you know, and I said to you, Maryland has done it, I think Michigan has done it also, and Carolina and some others. So the issue is being brought to the forefront by different organizations, primarily involved with men, with fathers and families, right? I think there's an E-News, if I remember correctly, that did an article on it lately too. And as I said, I've written about it in Fathers and Family. One of my cases was written up by a newspaper in Minnesota, I think it was, and that was on the internet, and that went crazy. I mean, comments coming in every which way. I mean, some of them were suggesting, you know, why don't you shoot the girl or what have you, but I mean, it was really crazy stuff coming in. And that's the type of publicity we need to generate, loud and every which way, because this is, as I said to you, the federal government can resolve this. A lot of aspects of this can be resolved at the federal government level. But what is happening is that there's no real publicity about this stuff. It's very quiet. Difficult to get it on the front pages. Anything to do with the mother, yeah, that makes front pages. To do with the father, no. And nobody will really see that these, particularly the military guys, they truly should not be able to deal with this. You know, I mean, this is something that can be resolved at a number of different levels, including in the military. As I say, I would like to see the military institute a plan whereby they issue no benefits without first doing a DNA test for their own, so as to avoid them, the military itself, getting defrauded by these people. But so far it hasn't happened, and I mean, we're working on it anyway. As I said, Dan Feinstein is interested, and I gather that someone I know is also involved in this will be doing some interviews in New York or so. And I understand they're supposed to be contacting me too, so hopefully we'll get enough noise out there to get enough people interested so that we can start a movement, particularly in California, where so many young men are caught up in this. So many young military guys, because we have bases through the state, so all these guys are caught up in it too. I'm hoping that we can get enough noise, enough reaction from the public out there to cause the legislature to rethink this statute of limitations situation, and an addendum to it that says, hey, you can challenge paternity anytime as long as you have credible DNA evidence. That should be automatic. It should be automatic. It should not be the type of thing where guys are just tearing their ears out stuck. I've known of instances where families are homeless because the guy's paying child support for a child that's not his own. And the child support people, when they get in on you, when they zoom in on you, you're in trouble. Because the reality is that if you're $2,000, $2,500 behind in your child support, they can take, well, they take your driver's license, they take your passport, they go into your bank account anytime you want. At least they go into your bank account anytime they want, irrespective of the amount you owe in arrears. But if you're over $2,500, you can guarantee your license will be gone, your passport will be gone. So your ability to do business is really limited like crazy. But that's how they work, and they have all this power. The child support people, child support services, you're if you're a lawyer, you can have your license suspended for failure to pay child support. You know, whatever you are, cosmetologist, whatever. If you're licensed by the state, you can be forced to pay it or lose your profession, and that's just not right. Because in instance, I say it's not the right person not paying for the right child.